welcome to all three of you. And well, let's start with the first question right away, and that's one for you, Emily, about the definition of those three terms that I've just spoke about. And let's start with the newest one on the block, regenerative agriculture. Could you explain us what regenerative agriculture is and why you think it's gaining such prominence?
Yeah, so regenerative agriculture, what a buzzword. We've been seeing it absolutely everywhere in all of the grocery stores, on Netflix documentaries. It is definitely a popular term these days. But what does it actually mean on farms? What do these practices entail? So when we think about regenerative agriculture, we're looking at a spectrum of agriculture. We're starting with one side of it, which is conventional practices. This could be the use of GMOs, herbicides, and just your very conventional farming practices that are seen across the United States and across the world. As we move forward, towards organic, towards regenerative organic, we maybe start seeing this term regenerative play into it. And when we think about regenerative, we can compare it to some of the practices that farmers were implementing historically. Maybe they were calling them conservation practices or sustainable farming. This could include no-till or heavy cover cropping, planting green. Maybe they're reducing their herbicide usage and their pesticide usage, but not completely eliminating their herbicide usage and pesticide usage. So as we move closer to organic, closer to regenerative organic, we're starting to see some of these regenerative practices be a part of a conventional farmer's repertoire. But what regenerative doesn't mean is regenerative doesn't mean non-GMO. It doesn't mean pesticide free. It doesn't mean herbicide free. It doesn't mean synthetic chemical free. So really it is just a term that we're seeing used quite often in relationship to the best management practices that some conventional farmers are implementing. Now we move closer to organic, and organic is a federally regulated term. So that's where we really see that jump from, what regenerative is, where there's not really any baseline, there's no really direct practices that can be associated with regenerative, to organic, where we are seeing the prohibition of GMOs being used in the system. We're seeing the prohibition of certain synthetic chemicals in pesticides and herbicides. We're seeing the encouragement of maintaining and improving soil health. But that is all federally regulated under the USDA or the EU or JAS or CORE, depending on where you're located within the world. And as we move further, and maybe the furthest down that spectrum, we see regenerative organic starting to really take hold in the marketplace. So regenerative organic is based off of three pillars: soil health, animal welfare, and social fairness. And what's so interesting about the first pillar, the soil health pillar, is that the baseline is being certified organic. So without that organic certification, there's no way to reach that regenerative organic seal and make those regenerative organic claims. And so when we're talking about regenerative organic, we're talking about the best of the best management practices in regenerative, married with the requirements set forth and so important by the organic standards to create this regenerative organic certification. And so historically, we've heard regenerative for so long. It's not like 2020 happened and it finally became popular. These practices have been used for centuries before agriculture. We can see the Three Sisters plantings of legumes and corn and squash and brassicas all together, in Native American culture. And so, it's really important to note that, we didn't create regenerative agriculture. We're really playing on some historical practices that many before us have implemented. And so, one other really cool historical piece to the term regenerative was that Bob and Maria Rodale of the Rodale family wrote a really interesting piece interesting think piece called The 7 Tendencies of Regeneration. And when we dive into it, it's not about just the soil, it's about communities, it's about animals, it's about how we all integrate together. So from there, you know, the many amazing players, Rodale Institute included, Patagonia included, and so many other amazing groups came together to create the Regenerative Organic Alliance, which is making regenerative organic certification happen.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really helpful also to hear the explanation of the spectrum where these different concepts are placed, from regenerative agriculture to organic to regenerative organic building on one another. It does beg the question, why is organic in itself not enough? I mean, or is organic not regenerative by nature already? Why is it necessary to include the concept of regenerative agriculture on top of organic?
That's a great question, and to say that organic, you know, is not enough, I don't believe that the founders would even necessarily agree with that. We think that farmers who are making the change from conventional or maybe using some regenerative practices to certified organic are making a huge leap, and they're making big change in the industry. And so this is kind of that next step for the farmers who are very comfortable in the organic system and looking for ways to be beyond what the organic regulations are stipulating, but also to find a place in the market for them as well. So, you know, when we have organic farmers, regardless of the practices that they're implementing, whether it's no-till or maybe they have a really diverse crop rotation, they're still making that same premium in the organic marketplace, you know, as these maybe beyond organic farmers. And so what the regenerative organic certification is doing is creating a spot in the market for these farmers who are going above and beyond the organic regulations, so that they can obtain the premiums that kind of reflect the actual cost of doing things environmentally correct when it comes to farming. And so, you know, where this came from, I think there was a number of things that kind of led to the regenerative organic movement. The first being soilless medium practices in the United States. So within the USDA, aquaponics and hydroponics are not prohibited. We know at the EU level they are, and so there's been some frustration about moving aquaponics and hydroponics into a prohibited category under the USDA, and a lot of pushback at the federal level from making that happen. And so one thing that the regenerative organic standards does is it actually prohibits the use of these soilless medium growing techniques, and requires farmers to actually maintain and improve soil health and crop health throughout their system. And another piece, you know, that one we can't forget is the continuous improvement aspect. And so a lot of where organic farming maybe gets some negative feedback is that there's no way to track how a farmer is maintaining or improving the health of the soil, the health of the crops, the health of the overall ecosystem. And so farmers can often, you know, maybe get away, or there's some loopholes where farmers could farm just really at the very basic levels of organic and not be improving their systems, where in the regenerative organic systems, they are actually required to show continuous improvement over time. And that's really dictated by the bronze, silver, and gold levels within regenerative organic. And so I'd say because of those two things, the continuous improvement aspect and soilless medium concerns, there was the creation of the regenerative organic standards, and maybe that need to go beyond organic.
Super clear. Thank you. That helps. That helps a lot. I wanted to ask the same question to you, Rachel, about the why both organic and regenerative organic for a company like Patagonia, especially as Patagonia was one of the first investors in organic cotton. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about why that was back in the 90s, I believe, and what prompted you to shift, or maybe not shift, to also include the focus on an investment in regenerative organic cotton.
Sure. Yeah. And Emily, thank you so much for those explanations. Even doing this in my job, it was super helpful to hear you explain it like that. So thank you so much. So yeah, for Patagonia, we switched to organic cotton in the mid 90s, as you said, Bart. And as the story goes, there were folks in our Boston store who were getting sick. And we did some research and found out that it was from formaldehyde off-gassing from conventional cotton products and being like stored in the basement there. And when our leadership learned about that, they basically decided to switch to organic cotton in one season. And they were like, this is unacceptable for us. And so they did the entire switch. And at the time, you know, in the 90s, the organic cotton industry was even less developed than it is now. So when you talk to some of the folks who are at the company, then they talk about how hard it was. But they went and they visited conventional cotton farms and organic cotton farms, and it was a no-brainer for the company. They just felt that it was such an important switch to make. And so from, I think it's 96, we've been sourcing only organic cotton. And that's been a really important part of our business. But I think we do feel like organic cotton has not kind of scaled as much as we hoped it would, right? Which is one of the reasons why we've been working with OCA, is to try to help organic cotton go above 1% of the world's cotton. So that was kind of some of the things that were going on. And then we started learning about regenerative agriculture maybe 5-6 years ago. Well, and just to back up 1 second, our founder Yvonne Chenard also founded Patagonia Provisions in 2012, which is our food business. And that was the beginning of thinking about agriculture and looking at kind of a broken agricultural system and thinking about how we as a business could try to contribute to a solution. And so as we started learning more about that, we started learning more about regenerative agriculture and getting really excited about the potential for it to help mitigate climate change. And there are these carbon sequestration potential impacts with this type of agriculture as well. And so as the story goes, as I've heard it, you know, Rose, who was our CEO at the time, was at a conference with David Bronner from Dr. Bronner's, and they were talking about regenerative and sustainability and kind of all these different terms, and felt that we needed a standard that really said what regenerative organic meant, and that it could be communicated clearly to consumers. And we felt really that organic had to be the baseline. So we feel that you can't be regenerating the soil if you're putting chemicals on it. And so that was kind of where the thought of kind of regenerative organic came out. And of course, we partnered with the amazing folks at Rodale to create this certification. And now the Regenerative Organic Alliance is taking it and really running with it. And the other thing that was really important was that it was looking at in the entire farm system. So as Emily said, it's a 3-pillared system. It's a 3-pillared certification, right? So we're looking at soil health, but also animal welfare and social fairness. And we felt that you needed to be looking at in the entire farm system, and not just the soil or not just kind of the agricultural practices, in order to really have this regenerative system. And so that's why there are requirements about how the animals are supposed to be treated on the farm. And then there are requirements for the farmers and for the farm workers themselves. And so just as the soil health pillar requires organic as a baseline, the animal welfare and social fairness pillars also have kind of other certification requirements as a baseline. And that was intended to build on existing certifications and not kind of try to reinvent the wheel completely over again. So for us, that just felt really, really important. And as we were learning more about it, we were thinking for Patagonia Apparel, how do we include it in our business? And that's how we got to Regenerative Organic Certified Cotton. And the folks at Pratibha were our first partners with Avinash's company, were one of our 2 first partners to start this journey with us. So we started working on this in 2018. We're going into our 4th year, which is totally wild. But, you know, so working with organic cotton farmers, building on these regenerative practices, and we still are really committed to organic cotton. We believe strongly in organic cotton and organic practices. And actually, that's why Patagonia also has started sourcing cotton in conversion over this past year, which is sourcing cotton that's making the transition to organic so that farmers have support during that process as well. So we see, kind of as Emily was talking about the spectrum, we see it also as this spectrum, and that we're trying to support farmers at each step of the way. So we all need more organic cotton so we can source more ROC cotton, and help to, you know, really support farmers in making that transition, and hopefully have a positive environmental benefit as well.
Thank you. That makes complete sense. And I have a lot of other questions for you, but since you already gave such a nice shout out to Avinash, I think it's a nice bridge to actually, well, move to the third panelist here, Avinash. And since you are working on the ground with farmers in India that have been indeed transitioning from organic agriculture over the past 3 years to regenerative organic agriculture as per the ROC standard, yeah, the obvious question is what does that mean? How does that look like? What does it mean for farmers, for already certified organic farmers, to move into regenerative organic agriculture?
Yeah, thanks, Bart. Thanks, Rachel and Emily, throwing light on standards. But I'm just going to give you my perspective as an implementer. You might have made the standard, but I see as an implementer, when I was doing conventional farming, the more focus was on the productivity. Whatever way I want, I need to increase the productivity. When I shifted to organic, my focus was on reducing the chemicals from the soil. That was the focus. Now, when I shifted to regenerative organic as an implementer, my focus, my attention is on all the elements of agro ecosystem and creating that balance between all these elements. So that is the shift in the focus. So I have different thing in the vision when, as an implementer, we are doing organic, regenerative organic. And from farmers' perspective, as you rightly mentioned in the beginning itself, the farmers, when we first went and told them this is how the standard works and this is all the elements of the standard. So the first response was, okay, you want me to do what my grandfather used to do 50, 60 years ago. So that's what you want me to do. So they used to do mixed cropping, nothing was grown, monocropping. They used to have plants on the periphery of that band. So that's how they see a regenerative. Another, when I said creating that, paying attention to all the elements of agro ecosystem. So another response from the farmer comes that this regenerative is something like re-establishing that connection of heart with the plant, with the soil, with the people, with the animals, and all the elements of the ecosystem, even the microorganisms in the soil. So that's another perspective they come from when they talk about regenerative. One very interesting response I came from the farmer who said, this regenerative, you just trying to shift my attention from self-existence to coexistence. So that was something wonderful I really heard from a particular farmer. So it is kind of another response could be you're giving life back to the soil, because in Eastern philosophy, we all think that we are originated from the soil and now the soil is depleting, the health is reducing. So they think that if you improve the soil of the health, it is not giving back life to the soil, but a life back to the next generation. So these kind of different perspective they have when they talk about regenerative organic farming. So this is what, as an implementer, as a farmer, I consider regenerative organic. But thank you.
Thank you, and really nice to hear that the different feedback that you received from farmers while doing this on the ground. I wonder what were the practices that most resonated with the farmers or were easiest to implement, and where did you find maybe resistance or hesitance in the farming communities when it came to what specifically the ROC standard or moving beyond organic?
So there are many things, because there was the whole shift in thinking, and the attention was shifted from reducing chemical to be addressing all the elements. So we were working on various things. First thing is the cropping system. That was something we really had to work right from the beginning, because we were having in that particular area some intercropping, but now we had all these intercrop, cover crop. That was one of the challenge to introduce the cover crops, because that was not very much in the practice. So we need to identify what could be the crops which are really going to work with the cotton as cover crop and going to cover the land for the larger piece of the land during cotton crop cultivation. So then pollinator habitat was not given that attention while we are doing organic. So that was something brought into the system in regenerative. and that has given a lot of benefit to the farmer that I'm going to share subsequently. How a pollinator habitat which was introduced with cotton become later on a main crop for the farmer and a substitute to the soybean. So that was something wonderful happened in this process. So all these activities initially we did feel some resistance, but the biggest resistance is with the tillage part, because to get the goal we need to be zero tilling the land, and that still remains for us a distant thing to achieve, because we have reduced the tillage to a lot, but still in the mindset of the farmer, can we do agriculture doing no tillage? So that is something really we need to work upon, and we need to create those models where we are working in some piece of the land without tilling and then see the results. So this is going to be something which I think we're going to take some time, and what is required is a huge amount of patience working with the farmers when all these practices which will fetch us the gold color would take some time and the patience. So these are some challenges and some resistance we face from the farmer while implementing this program.
Thank you, Avinash. And it's also, of course, maybe it's good to mention that in the past 3 years in which you as Vasudha with Patagonia have been actually piloting this approach in India, there's been a lot of learnings, and I think a lot of these have fed into improvements of also the actual standard, right? In well, making sure it makes sense also in the Indian context. And I'm not sure who out of the three of you to ask this, but the ROC is a relatively young standard. It's not just been piloted in India. I know mainly in the US, it's where it's currently implemented. What have been the main lessons, the biggest changes made to that standard, and also subsequently the biggest successes that you've seen out of the first years of implementing the standard? Whoever wants to go first. And if there's no volunteer, I'll ask.
Well, let me continue on.
My guess.
So this is our 4th year in 150 farmers in the first year, scaled it up to 500, then 30,000. This year we are trying hands on 2,000 plus farmers. So let's see how it works out in the 4th year. But the huge change I found as a success, and which really gives satisfaction to me working with these farmers all these 4 years, was we changed the cropping system to the use initially, but I'm just focusing right now also cotton, though we have moved on and even trying intercropping with other crops in the subsequent season. But in cotton only, we could identify almost, I think, more than 30 crops which can get along with the cotton as intercrops, cover crops. And they're all kind of range. You have pulses, you have cereals, you have vegetables, you have floriculture, you have spices also. So all kind of crops which we tried with the cotton. And now we see in this 4th year and 3rd year, we see a lot of farmers having 10 to 15 crops along with the cotton. So that was something gives so good a satisfaction for us to work. So that I consider as the one of the biggest success. Another thing was when we were just trying to introduce these different crops. So we shifted from earlier in this particular area, soybean was another crop with the cotton, but we tried marigold as a pollinator habitat. But later on, farmer found benefit and they replaced soybean from marigold, because marigold is giving them more than 2 times of the revenue and almost 2 times of the profit. And at the same time, this is a really good soil conditioner, and subsequent crop also gets more yield, because earlier crop was the marigold. So marigold was a crop which was never grown commercially, and now we link the farmers with a pharmaceutical company which is using this marigold for their eye care products. So this is what we introduced, and at the same time, turmeric was another crop which we started as intercrop. Now this has become the main crop, and we're just giving them the supply chain for turmeric as well. And this year we have introduced ashwagandha, Indian ginseng. If you know about like botanical name, I think Withenia somnifera. that we have introduced in this particular season. So this is going to be a third crop which will be introduced because we just thought through while working on different cropping system. So that was the added benefit we got, and that I consider as one of the successes we have. And we have a couple of few more to mention, but I think I should stop here. So I get excited with so many things happening all these years. So over to you now.
That's clear. No, amazing, Avinash. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that does also clearly demonstrate this concept of continuous improvement that this regenerative organic tries to encourage within its system and moving beyond organic. It's great to see that you've discovered so much. And actually, that also brings me to the point of when we talk about the impact of these systems. Not just environmentally, but also a bottom line for the farmer's income. Maybe Emily, going back to you, what is it that you have seen, mainly then in the US where you work? What has been thus far the impact that you've seen from implementation of regenerative organic practices, both on the environmental side as well as on the earnings of farmers?
Yeah. Avinash, thank you for sharing that experience of diversifying crop rotations is going to be a model for many years to come for farmers across the world. So I just want to emphasize the relevance and the importance of what Avinash just said. So often in conventional and organic systems, industry is allowing and forcing farmers to monocrop. If they're going to offer a high price for one crop, that farmer is going to continue to grow that crop year after year, and it's going to force a farmer into a monocrop situation. And so when we are diversifying our markets and when the industry is diversifying which crops that they want to purchase as regenerative organic, it's going to impact the bottom line of what the farmer is able to make income-wise, and it's going to diversify cash flow as well. So a lot of those crops you talked about aren't harvested one time a year. They're harvested throughout the year, maybe even as a perennial that's going to be harvested multiple times a year, impacting cash flow. And so that is one, I think, of probably the most important things that regenerative organic is actually doing in the system, is it's changing how industry and farmers are interacting together. And it's not just about buying the highest priced cotton that a farmer can possibly sell. It's about the whole system and how that system works together. Because if we aren't encouraging farmers to diversify, then they're going to do what's best for their bottom line, and they're going to grow the same crop year after year. And so I'm in awe, first of all, of the work that you guys are doing in India and the diversity that is being seen on each of these individual farms, which is changing just complete cash flows on all of these farms. So for that, I would say crop rotations is really the one that we're seeing the most impact on both biodiversity environmentally, but then also on the bottom line. I would be remiss if I didn't mention climate change and just the whole impact that carbon sequestration and that increased vegetative cover, the reduced amount of times that tillage is occurring, all of those things are going to increase the amount of carbon that can be stored in the soil, and that's going to make waves when it comes to reducing the impacts of human-induced climate change. And farmers have that opportunity on the ground to make that happen. And so, yeah, I would say so many environmental benefits that we can't even, we don't even know right now what the amazing impacts are going to be in the future. But those biodiversity and carbon sequestration are going to be two huge ones that we're going to see really impacting farmers' bottom line in the future.
Thanks, thank you. And yes.
Just want to jump in to add something, because it's about the environment we talked about, but even the cropping system, how they impact the society, the community, that is also a very good example, very good experience we had when we grown this marigold. Marigold is a multi-harvest crop, so you require a lot of labor to pick those flowers. And in this particular area, small-holding farmers with a couple of members of the family, they used to go in search of work outside the city, and along with them used to go their children as well. But when we grown marigold, those farmers had the labor available at their own farm, so they did not migrate. A few of them did not migrate, so their children could go to school because they did not migrate. So how this crop affect the community as well? So that when we said the entire ecosystem is so well connected with each other, you just ignore once and other gets affected, and you just take care of once, then how well the other one gets it's being taken care of. So this is what a wonderful experience we had during this different cropping system.
That's beautiful. This ripple effect of well, a positive impact on not just the farm, but also the actual entire community, the household, education. Thanks, Avinash. And well, there's two things that I wanted to respond to. Emily, back to your point as to we've spoken about the economic impact in terms of cash flow and earnings for farmers, and then you alluded to the environmental impacts, and where you talk about we expect and we think, or well, we can, I think, reasonably assume that these impacts are there. But are you also tracking, or is there any research, any science behind tracking the actual and measured impact of these environmental benefits of regenerative organic, or also organic as such?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a great question. There's a big thunderstorm happening right now at my house, so I apologize. So Rodale Institute has been around for a long time. We've been doing research for 70 years, and I would say that our flagship research project is the Farming Systems Trial that's been occurring at our headquarters in Kutztown, Pennsylvania for 40 years, which is a comparison of organic cropping systems versus conventional cropping systems. And through that, we've created some systems and seen results of what organic can actually do when we are implementing it in a long-term system. So, definitely increase carbon storage in the soil, increase soil organic matter percentages, which are going to increase the amount of water that a farm can hold, which is going to increase the resilience against drought. And so all of these things, all of these practices, we're going to scale up in regenerative organic. It's taking what maybe would be required under the organic systems, and it's scaling the impact that it can have on farmers. And so, when we can definitely take very specific practices and I'll say integration of livestock and cropping systems, because that's a really hot topic right now. A lot of people are talking about ways that they can integrate livestock into their systems. There's so many studies right now that are coming out showing the economic benefit of increasing to having that different cash flow, having livestock in the system, being able to harvest livestock and sell that livestock, but also being able to close the loop on nutrients and reducing our outside needs for fertilizers, NP and K, by being able to produce that on site with our livestock. And so really making this a full circle when it comes to an economic system and an environmental system that works for farmers. And so, yeah, tons of research that's coming out, more research to come from Rodale, more research to come from other amazing players like universities, the Organic Center, and that's not even to mention all of the EU partners out there that are doing amazing work as well. I'll say another really exciting part is, Rodale has been around for such a long time, and we've started opening centers in different parts of the country as well. So we now have centers in Iowa, Georgia, California, and soon to be one, our first international one in Parma, Italy. And so what's really exciting about that is that we can figure out how all of these systems, we figured out how they work well in Pennsylvania. Now we can replicate that in different parts of the country so that farmers can be successful. We can make all the mistakes so farmers don't have to, basically.
And super exciting, and I'd love to follow some of the outcomes of that research as it comes out. Now, the second thing I wanted to get back to, and that's maybe playing the devil's advocate here a little bit, since we are here in an organic cotton summit, and we are talking about crop diversification, and I think Emily actually really nicely spoke about this tension, this friction that exists between vertical supply chains that are mostly very, have a specific commodity focus, and then the farming system as such, which might benefit the most from a very diversified cropping system. Now we see the same, of course, in the textiles sector and cotton specifically. Again, I'm not sure, Rachel, Avinash, who to ask this, but how do you manage this friction? Does it exist, first of all, that friction, and how do you manage this? Would it be, how do you deal with, well, in this case, for example, maybe cotton being produced to a lesser extent with the farmers that you're engaging with in the program?
Well, I can't speak necessarily for kind of on the farm. I think that we are kind of seeing it as the whole system and seeing the benefits of the whole system. And I think in general, we are still trying to support the farmers in these other cropping systems, and trying to purchase some of their other crops also through the provisions business, and trying to make those types of connections and make sure that there is a market for all these other crops. I think, we've seen over the past year these huge shortages with organic cotton, and it's been really challenging. But we're hoping that we'll have more and more farmers making this transition and see these additional economic benefits, right? That if you are having these multi-cropping systems, hopefully you can actually make more money than just selling the one crop or just selling the one, only cotton, and that there's more opportunity there. And so we're hoping to make the entire system work better for farmers, but bring more farmers into organic, which is why we're also supporting the cotton and conversion programs and trying to kind of increase organic cotton that way. So I guess I don't see it as much of such a challenge as the way that you framed it, maybe, but that we're kind of all trying to get to the same place of improving soil health, helping to mitigate climate change, and of course we need cotton, and we think that this is the best way to farm cotton. But we really want to be able to support the farmers. And, Patagonia also sources recycled cotton, for example. And so that's using cotton that already exists in the world, and reusing it. And so we're thinking a lot about those other types of fibers as well, beyond organic cotton, but we want to make sure that the farmers have the support that they need, and the market that they need in order to sell that organic cotton as well. Avinash, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
And I think, Bart, we really need that shift from the focus. Like, still, we come from that background where we see an individual crop, how much productivity it is giving. That focus needs to be shifted. In fact, a small sample we have taken, we have realized that there is a drop in the yield of cotton for 10 to 15%, but economic yield per acre increased by 20 to 25%. So that compensated for that. So the overall economic yield was 10% plus in the initial couple of years when we were working with these farmers. But sorry, definitely being textile company, I need to focus on the cotton. So another challenge comes is the crop rotation, because for the gold standard, I need to go for 7 crop rotation, and for small holding farmers, he cannot grow cotton every year. Maybe after 3rd year, the cotton will grow. And I hope still Patagonia will keep supporting us when there is going to be a cotton after every 2 give, when we really achieve that gold standard. So this is going to be a challenge, and I don't have answer to this, but that focus from the industry perspective needs to change, that I'm not going to focus only on the crop, I'm going to focus on the cropping, in fact, all the entire agro ecosystem. So that needs to change, and that will definitely gradually. From farmers' perspective, it has already changed. It doesn't see a single crop. Now it sees the farm and all the elements of the ecosystem. Now also we need to change as manufacturers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think one of the other ways that we've mitigated that, Avinash, is by including more and more farmers in the project every year, right? So we're not relying on, it's not necessarily always the exact same group, so that we have enough farmers who are getting the benefits, that we have the amount of cotton that we also need from them.
Very true. Yes.
Yeah.
Bart, what we're talking about is a high level of industry cooperation, multiple industries working together towards a common goal of regenerative organic certification on farms so that full rotations can be purchased and that we can see the economic benefit.
And I know that Pratibha also, Avinash, maybe you can speak to this, had started like a food business also to try to provide a market for the farmers who are also growing these additional food crops. And so that's the way that Pratibha itself was trying to provide that additional support. And I think that that's an incredible model that we're seeing also with other cotton suppliers that we've spoken to, that they have kind of additional businesses to support all the things that the farmers are growing.
We have started working on other crops, creating the market linkages, but we have just scratched the surface. So I think it is going to take some time, but that's the way forward. Even if it's tough, you need to trade on the same path. You have no option. This is not a matter of choice. This is a matter of compulsion now. You just cannot be degenerative. You have to be regenerative now. No choice.
Yeah, and this is not only, I mean, as I said before, that is a question of me, of course, playing devil's advocate there. I think even as an organic initiative that we are, it's not just regenerative organic, it's also the organic agricultural concept that comes from a very holistic perspective. When you look at the farming system, it's not about a single crop. This organic isn't a single commodity certification. So already I think an organic certification, as a farmer and as the community supporting organic farmers, that is a concept from which you work. Although even there, we've seen that strong industry initiatives sometimes, impact farmers to actually, move more towards monocropping. Whereas this, I think, is a beautiful example of how you give the balance back to multi-cropping. So thank you for that. Now let's stick a little bit to the textile sector here, and to also the ROC certification. Rachel, doing the first work on this, how have you been working on getting your ROC into final product, and also how to communicate this to you consumers? How have they responded to that? How do you explain also the differences between organic and regenerative organic to them, if you do that at all? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. So on the implementation side, I will say it is not always easy. I think, because we started ROC in partnership with existing suppliers, with Pratibha and also with Arvind, who are two of our organic cotton suppliers in India. I think that really helped to kind of pull the cotton through to finished product. I think, I do lots of calls with other brands, and they'll find an amazing farm project, but then they can't find the supply chain to support it. And so I'm not actually sure who made the decision to start there, but whoever did, it was, I think, a brilliant decision that we made, because with Pratibha and Arvind, we had to set up supply chain to pull the cotton through. And Pratibha had already this cotton project with Vasudha and was working directly with cotton farmers. So they really had structures in place already to enable us to do the project successfully. And I feel really lucky to have them as partners. And Avinash has been an excellent partner throughout this journey, I'd say. And with Pratibha, they're a vertical supplier for us, so we source finished good directly from Pratibha's finished good factory, and that's been really helpful for us. And so we first started selling ROC pilot projects in spring 20, which is also when COVID hit. So, there was a little bit of a challenge there, but I'm not one of our marketers, but I worked closely with the marketing team kind of on how to tell this story. And the first step that they needed to take was to explain to consumers that your cotton t-shirt actually comes from a farm, right? That for a lot of people, they don't actually think about where your garments come from. And the fact that cotton actually is a crop, that was kind of like a first connection that they wanted to make. And so the first campaigns and what they've continued talking about now is making the connection between the cotton t-shirt and the cotton crop, and kind of connecting it to the farm and talking about the benefits of the practices. And Patagonia loves film, and so we did kind of like 3 like short films talking about regenerative organic and tracing some of the history, and that's another way to kind of try to educate consumers. So it was a lot of education. I think we definitely made it challenging for ourselves because we started selling cotton and conversion and organic and regenerative organic and recycled cotton all in the same year. So trying to explain the differences between those, our marketers are great at explaining complicated concept. And so we have a lot of resources on our website where we talk about the differences. You know, Patagonia has had our footprint chronicles, which is our kind of supply chain web page for, I think it's like 13 or 12 or 13 years now, where we talk about supply chain. So we've kind of always been telling those stories on the website. And so when we started doing regenerative organic, it was another place and another way to tell that story. And we have some beautiful photos from the farms that are on the website. And there's a great page where it talks about each of the regenerative practices that we've mentioned here today, and kind of shows pictures and talks about what each of them means. So yeah, I think it's been really exciting. I can't speak necessarily specifically to kind of like consumer response. I don't have any specific numbers, but I think we're definitely seeing excitement and enthusiasm, and you know, the products are selling, and it's a way for us to support these type of initiatives, these farms, these farmers. And I think for Patagonia consumers, you know, they tend to believe in this kind of stuff and want to support it. And so I think we're really lucky to have customers who want to do this work with us and believe in our mission as well. So yeah, yeah, there's a lot of resources out there that we've been working on.
That's great. That's great. And I mean, knowing that the regenerative organic work also happens within the programs that are happening with OCA in India, we also have noticed a lot of increased interest for regenerative organic certified in India from multiple brands. So I know definitely that market is growing as we speak, as is the organic market. I mean, even more. So that's great to see. Now, but that's not the only thing that's growing. I think we've been discussing a lot this part of the spectrum where we're talking about organic and regenerative organic. Now, just let's go back to, I think, maybe an even larger share, much larger share of the market, where you see conventional agriculture also picking up on the word on regenerative agriculture and some of its practices. How do you look at conventional picking up regenerative agriculture, marketing it as such? Is that a good thing? Do you think it competes or cannibalizes maybe some of the work done on the other end of the spectrum? Emily, Rachel, who can I ask to reflect on this?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a shot at it first. Yeah, I think, you know, going back to that spectrum, you know, especially at Rodale Institute, we need to meet farmers where they are to encourage them forward. You know, we can't discourage certain practices because that's going to alienate every farmer, the majority of farmers, out of the conversation. And so I think the idea of regenerative being adopted by conventional farmers definitely has some good aspects to it. Anytime that we can see an increase of best management practices on farms is going to be beneficial to the environment and hopefully the farmer's bottom line as well. One thing that can be challenging is then the consumer maybe confusion around the word regenerative. Is that, you know, Rachel just talked about how Patagonia is doing so much marketing just to clarify what the terminology around regenerative organic means. So when you're at, you know, the grocery store, or you're at a farmer's market and you're seeing, you know, regenerative organic, you know, we need to make regenerative organic synonymous with regenerative. We can't, there can't be really this space for just regenerative, because you know, Rodale truly believes the use of any of these herbicides and pesticides that are being used on conventional operations, they're not going to regenerate the land the way that regenerative certification and the farm practices required by regenerative certification is going to do. But it is important that we meet those farmers where they are so that we can work with them towards, you know, a better farming world with organic and regenerative organic. And I say one little anecdote is that, you know, we work with farmers across the world, and sometimes organic, you know, maybe this is a crazy statement to make with the people who will be, you know, who are attending this conference, but organic isn't always received very well in certain communities of the United States and in certain communities internationally as well. And so regenerative is kind of this, like, we're meeting every farmer where they are. It's the intersection of all farming practices. And some farmers, they see regenerative organic and they say, oh, this is the best of both worlds, and now would actually consider organic certification when maybe previously they haven't considered organic certification. So we are definitely seeing some farmers coming to the table now that the ROA has created a standard around regenerative and are talking about how they're going to look at a cropping system with no herbicides and pesticides and no GMOs and move towards a regenerative organic system. So I think it's vitally important that we're considering all farmers in the conversation, but really the end goal is working towards everybody in a regenerative organic future.
Thank you. That's a beautiful answer. And with that, we're also nearing, I think, the end of this panel discussion, but I do want to ask you one last question for everyone that's joining today, and we'll have a mix of partners that work with farmers on the ground, brands and retailers in the textile space, suppliers. Could I ask all three of you just to briefly share whatever you would recommend them, or any advice you have for those that are looking to integrate or start working with regenerative organic cotton in this case? And maybe Avinash, I can start. Let's start bottom up with the farmers first, and then move to Emily and then Rachel.
A couple of perspectives from commercial perspective, if we think how we can scale up and how tangibly some differences and some impact can be seen. So from commercial perspective, I think all collaborators, they should work with the long-term perspective in the mind. The way we work Patagonia, the initial commitment was for the 5 years. So that is something, a minimum time period we should be looking when there are investors, implementers, farmers, and all those who are going to participate in this. So from commercial point of view, this is 5 years minimum land holding we need to have, and then we can review that further. Then another thing, already we discussed on providing the market linkages for other crops. That has to be taken into consideration right from the beginning. So this is from the commercial point of view. Of course, some premium can be given to the farmers for doing all good works. Then at the point of implementer, the way we have been trying to implement, after a couple of years, we realized that engagement of women and youth of the community has to be sought right from the beginning, because this cannot be a standard driven, brand driven, or investor driven movement. This has to become a farmer driven movement. So that we realized in the second year of our activities, and then we sought the participation from all those youth. Now almost 50 youth on the ground working with us. They belong to the community. They are working for the community, and they are generating some income out of doing all those regenerative activities for their community members. So this is one thing we need to consider right from the beginning. And lastly, from the agriculture perspective, if we see the cropping system which we are trying, we really need to have some innovative cropping system models which we need to try every year, work on that, and keep a holistic approach on that part. So this is something need to be taken care of right from the beginning. So these three perspectives I have while implementing tangibly, making some impact on the ground.
Thank you, Avinash.
Yeah, thank you. I would, yeah, I mean, took the words right out of my mouth. Successful farmers have a place to sell their crop to. And so really to make this system work is a deep industry connection between the farmers. So farmers, that goes both ways. Farmers need to be open with what they want the future of their farm to look like with their buyers, and their buyers should be doing the same with their farmers. And so, having that open conversation about what you want to be implementing on your farm, what practices you want to be implementing on your farm, have those conversations with your buyers, be open with your buyers about the future of your cropping system, and yeah, take it step by step. Again, it's a spectrum. It's about moving the bar forward slowly every year and making continuous improvements. It's not going to be perfect the first year. It's probably not going to be perfect the second through the fifth year. But every year that you're farming in a more regenerative way is going to add benefits to soil health, environmental health, and human health. So take the time that's needed to do that.
Thanks. And Rachel, you last.
Bringing it home. Well, from the brand side, I would say, making the shift to organic is the first step. And, Bart, just to call you guys out, we've been working with OCA for all the time that we've been doing the ROC pilots with Pratibha and with Arvin. And I think that partnership was super, super helpful, especially at the beginning as kind of the ROC was just starting off, to have you guys there also as partners and to be doing the third-party data validation on the farm and helping us with the initial kind of commitments, the cotton commitments before the sowing and before the harvest. So I want to say thank you to OCA and to really, say that I think organic for us, organic is the first step, right? Organic and then regenerative organic. And I know that for some brands, even organic is a really big step and a really big challenge. And so I encourage folks to be working on that and kind of going to organic first and then being able to start thinking about regenerative organic. I think having these partnerships with our suppliers like we have with Pratibha has been hugely beneficial, and having that close relationship has really enabled us to be successful together with them. And so that's why also mapping your cotton supply chain is also really important, so that you know where the cotton's coming from and you can establish those relationships, and then kind of work on making the transition. And as Emily said, from the brand side also, it doesn't happen overnight. And this is not the way that brands are used to sourcing and used to working. And so it is a big shift and it's a big challenge. And I think also starting small is beneficial. With Pratibha, we started, as Avinash said, with 150 farmers the first year. And it was a really small amount of cotton, but starting small and then growing over time and seeing it, as Avinash said, as the long-term commitment, as a long-term partnership, I think is what enables us to do this work. And so I want to say thank you to everyone on this call, because I think, honestly, what we're doing it all together. And I'm just so appreciative of what Rodell's doing. Emily, it's so nice to meet you and hear you speak about your work. And Avinash has been such a great partner, and also you, Bart. So I'm really grateful for what we've done so far. And I'm looking forward to the next 5, 10, 15 years of kind of just continuing to improve this work. So thank you so much.
Wow. Well, thank you. I couldn't have wished for more beautiful closing remarks than what you just gave us, Rachel. Thank you so much. That's really helpful, and I agree with you that all of this, when we want to make this into a success, it requires this close collaboration between end of the supply chain and farmers. And a lot of the success factors aren't any different if you speak about organic or regenerative organic. And thank you for also reminding us that it's already an incredible first step to start working on sourcing more and more organic cotton in the right way, providing the farmers with the support they need to do that successfully, and use that as a step to then look beyond that and start engaging in ROC. But I want to thank all of you a lot for helping me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call today, understanding this spectrum. I think that's one of the words that we've heard a lot during this call, from regenerative to organic and regenerative organic agriculture, making us understand what it means, what they have in common, and what we need for them to be a success and to continuously improve what we do. I think that's the second word that I've heard a lot during this call, and I couldn't agree more. Really a big thank you to all three of you for sharing your insights, your experiences, your knowledge. Thank you for being with us today. And before we hop off, of course, I also want to thank everyone who joined us today, listening into this conversation, hopefully giving us a lot of questions and remarks to respond to after we close today. And I don't want to say goodbye before I've made you all aware of more great content that's coming tomorrow, because there will be 2 other live events as part of the summit. First of all, it's the Regional Organic Cotton Roundtable Summit for South and Southeast Asia, which we will be co-hosting with Textile Exchange. So please join us then. And another panel, which I will be moderating, on investing in conversion cotton, where I'll be joined by the German Partnership for Sustainable Textiles and the H&M Group as we discuss this particular topic that is very relevant to scaling organic cotton supply, given the current high demand for this fiber. All right, well, that's it. Thank you, everyone, once more. I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day or evening, and bye-bye.